Hello. I'm going to talk about how we can make Python 3 application using TurboGears. I'm here at Europython, and I currently work at Accent as the CTO, which is mostly a Python company with some iOS and Android development. I'm a member of the TurboGears development team, and this is the reason why I'm here talking to you about TurboGears. I'm a MongoDB fan and a contributor to the Mongo Ming object document mapper. And I'm a skeptic developer, always looking for a better solution, and you will probably notice this by my slides, because we are going to see a bunch of ways to do to achieve our target. What's going to be about this talk? This talk is going to be about making web application on Python 3 and seeing what's available on Python 3, what's not, when we need to switch back to Python 2 because dependencies or tools are not available on Python 3. And we are going to try to use TurboGears on both. We are going to see how object dispatch works, which is the way TurboGears dispatch pages. We are going to see how template engines work, and we are going to use the Gearbox toolkit, and we are going to see what's available on Python 3 and what's not. And we are going to do this because people usually think that their web application is just like this, okay, just a bunch of pieces that work together, but in reality it's like this. You have a lot of layers one over the other, that some work, some not, some are available on Python 3, some are not, so it's important to start knowing what's available in the new Python environment and what is not, to start moving forward to Python 3. And why we are doing this? Because it's important to know when you want to stick to Python 2, because otherwise you will have a lot of problems due to missing tools. But it's also important to start thinking that it's better to start on Python 3, so that you are future-proof and you will have to downgrade only when you see that something is missing. And if you wrote properly your code and use the correct libraries, you can switch between the two environments without much issues, at least when using Python 2.6, Python 2.7 and newer. I suggest people to start looking at Python 3 because it's actually a better version of Python. There's a lot of improvements. It's easier, and APIs are cleaner, a lot of being refactored in the way you use the language and where you find modules, and you don't have duplicated methods on a lot of things like before, and so it's a cleaner language. You should be starting sooner than later. What's TurboGears? TurboGears is a full-stack framework. It means that it provides you everything you need to make a web application. It's much like Django or Ruby on Rails or other frameworks that cover everything. But it's also a framework that has a so-called minimal mode. You can start TurboGears in minimal mode, and that will make it more like Flask or Bottle or other micro, medium-sized frameworks, and which makes it really good for starting on learning web applications, because you don't need to set up a whole complex project just to start writing something. And it's a non-opinionated framework. You can use it with any kind of template language, backend system, storage system, and that's one of the great features of TurboGears, because actually when you start looking around, you can choose whatever technology you prefer and use it instead of having to stick to what the framework enforces you. The first thing we are going to try to do is setting up multiple Python environments. Yes?
May I ask a question beforehand? Since you're one of the co-developers, if I understand correctly, what was the initial reason? When you looked at Django and said, well, this is not the stuff that we want to do, let's build an entire new framework. What was the reason for this initial step?
Okay, the reason why TurboGears was born is that it's actually older than Django. TurboGears was born nearly at the same time, in 2005, if I'm not wrong, or near around that time. TurboGears and Django have been, as far as I know, the first two MVC frameworks Python ever had. So TurboGears is far less known, but it's as old as Django. So it's not that actually we looked at Django and decided to rewrite it. At that time, I wasn't even a member of the development team. I just started contributing to TurboGears in 2011. So it's far older than me. Okay. And the first thing we are going to set up is our both Python3 and Python2 environments, and we are going to do this using Python Brew. And okay, here is how you can install Python Brew. You can download it from that link, and just running that line will install it in your ROM. It's not going to require any particular permission nor any no, it needs to be installed system-wide. It's available there. And to enable it, you just need to put inside your bash rc configuration file that line that loads the configuration for Python Brew. I already have Python Brew installed, and if I run it, it will tell you the list of commands available. The most important commands are actually use, which enables the Python version you want to use, and list, which just lists the versions you have. So if I list it, I can see that I have 2.6 and 3.3 installed. The reason is that 2.7 is just built in my distribution, so I didn't need to install it. And to install a Python version is as simple as like 2.7. Yeah, not Python, but Python Brew. And it will download it and set it up inside your ROM, so you don't need again to set it up system-wide and so on. I suggest you, I suppose that your system already have a Python 2 version, 2.6 or 2.7. 2.7 is better, so I suggest you to start installing Python 3.3. It's a bit easier. If you have Python 3.2, it's fine, but 3.3 it's a bit easier, as some utilities which makes easier to write code that work on both systems. So you should be starting with Python 3.3. So just run Python Brew install 3.3.0 and you will have a working Python 3 environment. I'm going to wait just a bunch of seconds so you can download it and install it. If you don't want to write it by hand, if you go on GitHub at the Python Brew project page, you will find also the command line to download and install it, so you just can copy and paste it. Yes?
My Ubuntu Linux virtual machine, I have a 2.7, not 3.3.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine to have a 2.7 as the Python system version. To set up 3.3, you need to download and use Python Brew. You see that when you download the Python Brew, you can run Python Brew install 3.3.0 to install 3.3.
And it will install.
Yes, it will do everything automatically. Yes.
The first command not work
Make if it doesn't work the curl command, make sure you actually installed curl on your Ubuntu system or whatever you're using. You can look at it like, I don't remember the actual name of the package. Yeah, it's just named curl, so just run apt-get install curl to make sure you have it installed and make sure you have network connection. So probably running apt-get install curl should fix your issue. Yeah, if you run Python brew list, it's going to show you only the Python interpreters you installed using Python brew. Yes. So your system interpreter is not there. No, no, no. You can use the system one.
You are using browser Windows?
Yes. See? XRL.us. Okay. XRL.us. Yeah. There you go. If it says close the terminal and open another one, if I do source bash RC, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we can do. So we install 2.7 and 3.3.
Yeah, just 3.3 needs to be installed because probably 2.7 is already the system interpreter.
Ah, so you can.
2.7 is already.
Ah, okay. So it already gets system Python.
No, Python brew doesn't know about it. Doesn't know you have Python 2.7 installed, but that's not important. You can use it anyway.
3.3.
Yeah, 3.3.
Python through is all installed.
What will you have to do to install?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Yes, all it is there, saying like okay to install Python 2.7. And actually, before I tried the 2.3 because I cancelled the download, and then it recovers from the
Thank you very
cache
much.
file, which is apparently empty.
Okay.
There.
From now, the default Python will be Python 3.3.
Yes. It's better. Python 3.3.
Yeah, it's easier to use from some point of view Python 3.3.
Yes, might be.
Okay, supposing you have a working installation of both Python 2 and Python 3.3, we are going to create some virtual environments for each of one, each one of them, so we can just switch from one to the other in a very simple way. It should come with your distribution, the virtual environment command, and in Python 3.3 it's built in the interpreter. So you can just run this command to set up a Python 2 environment, which is going to be where we are going to work, install our libraries, and so on. And for people that don't know about it, virtual environment is a way to have a self-contained Python installation that doesn't mess with your system-wide Python. Everything you install there is just available inside in the virtual environment. If you get out, it stops being available, and so on.
Will you please display again like the command that goes to Python 3.3?
Yeah, I'll show again the slide that with the Python brew install command. It's here behind this one.
The virtual env command is after the installation of the
Yeah,
3.37?
yeah. We are going to create the virtual env for Python 2 first and then for Python 3. Yeah, Python 3 has it. If it doesn't work for you with just the version number, try the full name, python-3.3.0. It should install it inside your home directory. Make sure you have 3D space, permissions, and that kind of things. Well, I'm going to create here a virtual environment for Python 3. Sorry, for Python 2. Okay. And actually, you are not always required to write these options because in some versions of virtualenv, no side packages is the default. No side package means don't link, don't use any package which is available in my system-wide installation. So we don't bring inside the environment packages we installed system-wide. And dash distribute means to use distribute in place of setup tools to perform distribution management and so on, which like on Ubuntu at least is the default option. On other distribution it will install setup tools. And here it's just the name I gave to my virtual environment. And as soon as it created the virtual environment, you can enable it using source py2 bin activate. And you will see that it's correctly available because you have the name of the virtual environment before the shell. And you can quit the virtual environment with the deactivate command. Now, I suppose most of you have installed and working Python 2 environment. So we are going just to create the same for Python 3. If you are missing virtualenv and you are like on Ubuntu, you can install it through apt-get. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah. Okay, now if you are correctly able to activate and deactivate your Python 2 virtualenv, we are going to do the same for Python 3, which is just before using virtualenv, we need to enable Python brew, which you can just do by using Python brew use the Python version you want to use. And then using pip, we are going to install virtualenv as it is available as a bash script if you install it. Even though Python3 already has the built-in command for Python. But if you install this way, you can use the same exact command as before. And then we are going to create our Python3 environment, and then we can just switch off Python brew at all. Like here, I'm enabled Python 3.3.0, and Python brew confirms you that you are using it. If you run it, you should see that it actually starts Python 3. I can install virtualenv, which in my case is already installed. And I can just run the same command as on Python 2 to create my Python 3 virtual environment. Okay. Now inside your directory you should have both environment, Python 2 and Python 3 environment. So I can just switch off Python brew and go back to my system environment. And from now on, if I want to use one Python or the other, I just enable the related environment. So to use Python 3, I just enable the Python 3 environment. And to use Python 2, I just enable the Python 2 environment, which runs Python 2.7. So I can switch from the two environments and have my package installed on Python 3 and Python 2. Yeah. Okay, that's because you didn't turn off Python brew. Make sure you run the last command, Python brew off. Because the first command Python brew use enables Python 3.3 for your current shell. So if you don't turn it off, you will always end up being on Python 3. Now I suppose you have both the environments available. And the first thing we are going to do is enable the Python 3 environment and install TurboGears 2.3 inside that environment. Yeah. Oh, that's strange. Okay, now that we have our working Python 3 environment, we can enable it and we can install TurboGears inside it. To install TurboGears, you can use pip install, and we are going to use the -f option, which forces to use a repository for packages which is not the Python package index, because TurboGears uses a separate repository for each version, so you can have a consistent and replicable installation without having to rely on PyPy, which some dependencies or libraries might have changed during time. And in the case you use the private index provided by TurboGears, you are sure that you always install the exact same version of every single library each time you install TurboGears, even if a new release has been made. And especially in this case, we need to use it because the 2.3 version, being a beta, is not available on PyPy. It's only available on the private index. Okay, so this is the command line you can use to install version 2.3, which is the first version that has support for Python 3. So if you install a previous version, nothing is going to work.
Not available in pip, right?
No, not yet. We only keep stable versions of on the package index. Yes, you see that here I have the Python 3 environment active. Looks like the network connection has some issues. Maybe I should be using a cable. Okay, if you currently have been able to install everything, you should see that it successfully installed the development tools and every dependency of it. You can also install TurboGears by itself, which will install a lot less packages, but in that case it's available only in minimal mode, while if you install the development tools, you have the full stack framework. Now, if you want to look at the documentation of TurboGears, you should rely on this link, which is the one for the version we are using, which is 2.3.0 beta 2. So look there if you are looking for something. Otherwise, you will find information which are for a previous version or maybe even unstable unreleased version and so on. And don't forget the trailing slash, otherwise read the docs will tell you that it doesn't exist. Okay, supposing we have finally everything in place. We have our environment and TurboGears installed and so on. We are going to create our first application, which is a really small application, just says hello world, classic hello world example. And we are going to create it in minimal mode because it's far much easier to understand and see what happens when using the minimal mode, even though a lot of features are not available. And we are just going to create an app.py file, and inside the file we are going to write this code. What does this code? Well, the core part is the app config line, config equal to app config, minimal true root controller, which actually creates a configuration for an application. Okay, here we are going to tell to TurboGears to be minimal mode and to use this controller for dispatching requests. This is particularly important because TurboGears uses object dispatch by default as the way to dispatch requests. So we are not going to write any regular expression or any strange dispatch way. We are just going to set up a controller, and every method of the controller which is exposed is just available as an URL. So I'm going to show you. If you don't want to write it from scratch, you can actually copy these from the documentation I gave you before. And on the first page, you have this exact example. So I'm just going to copy it. And paste it in my environment. Okay? Yeah, I'm going to show again where the documentation is. Here, it's the last link. Yeah. For anyone that wants to become famous, a great tool to create will be a shared clipboard for training sessions. Okay, now I'm going to show you how it works, then I'm going to explain it a little bit. Sorry. Yeah, we are on Python3. Well, one suggestion, if you put the brackets around print, it will work both on Python2 and Python3. So just put them. It won't work only if you have strange parameters additional or redirection of the input and so on. But for plain prints, you can just put brackets on both versions. Now if I just run my code, you will see that it will tell me that it's serving on port 8080. And this is just a warning that it tells me that I didn't register any renderer for my templates, so TurboGears is going to automatically register JSON for me. But as we are not using any template engine, it doesn't matter. And now if I open my code, I just get hello world as I wrote it in my code. Okay, what's happening here? The core part that is in charge of handling the request is actually the controller, which in this case we only have a root controller. Root controller is the one which is in charge of serving the root of your website. Okay, any controller can have any amount of subcontroller if you need to serve subdirectory, subpath, and so on. Any method you write here will be available as an URL if you use the expose, if you expose the method. And in this case, there is a special case which is index, which is served both when the method is, when the name is used and when it's not. So in this case, if I write index, or if I just don't write anything, it will still call index. If I write anything else, it will tell me that there isn't any method serving that request. Okay, so for example, I can create another method. And call it like more. And now I just restart my application. And so if I go at more URL, I get hello from more. So you see that it's pretty easy for simple dispatching. You just write the method that it's available. And the reason why you have to put expose is to avoid exposing internal methods you use for your own code, of course. Now the app config line, as I told you before, as I explained before, is the one that actually creates the configuration for a TurboGears application. So it's the one you use to create the actual Whiskey application. And the only option which we are passing is to have TurboGears in minimal mode, so it's not going to try to set up other things. And then we are going just to pass it the root controller of our application, which is actually this one we wrote right before. And then we are going to serve the application. How we are serving it? Well, we are serving it using the Whiskey reference simple server, which is built in Python. It's a single-threaded, single-process HTTP Whiskey server. You should not use it on a real website, but you can use it on your computer just for development. And the Whiskey reference make server function gets an address where to list on, in this case every, and then a port where to listen on, and then the Whiskey application to serve on at that address. And here we are going just to create a Whiskey application from the configuration we declared before. So TurboGears creates the Whiskey application for us and creates an application that serves the root controller we specified. And then we just tell to the HTTP server to serve forever. Every request it receives is just going to be served. As I explained you, object dispatches through method names, but it also handles parameters. Okay, so for example, in my more method, if I put it here param, and I start my application again, and if I ask for more, I now get a 404 because my more function requires that param. And if I put the param, it gets dispatched again, and especially my param is available for real, so I can actually use it. Hello from P1, and so on. So you don't have again to declare anything to have everything that is used inside your URL. Yes.
So the parameter names are declared in the function that you translate to the URL?
Yes. Whenever you call it in the function, if I call it param, in the URL will be param, and vice versa. You can also use catch-all arguments, like this one, and you would just get everything you pass to it. Sorry, I didn't restart the server. And I get it inside the keywords argument, the second parameter. And you can also, as you saw before, if I don't pass any parameters, it tells me a 404. If I want to avoid these, I can put the default parameter, and it's going to work to dispatch both for the missing or available parameter. And to easily implement nice URLs, it also works by dispatching by position. Like in Python, you can pass an argument to a function by name or by position. So if you use the URL encoded version, you pass them by name. If you want, you can pass them by position by using the dash. So you can quickly implement nice URLs without having to declare any regular expression or anything else. If you want to use a regular expression or more advanced dispatch system, it's available TGX root, which is a TurboGears extension, which permits to bind the roots to controller methods. So you can like dispatch a date using the date the guy wrote it without needing to pass it as a parameter and so on. This is a quick overview of how object dispatch works. I already show you somehow on my shell, but it is a more complex example with a subcontroller and so on. And for the root controller, you see that we are exposing multiple methods. Each one of them is matched from the URL to the controller with the same controller method with the same name. And if you pass arguments, they are available inside the argument list. If you pass any argument by name, as soon as if you pass any argument by name, it's available in the keyword arguments. And if you have a subcontroller, which you just declare to declarative way by setting it as a variable inside your class controller, it's going to be dispatched as it is a method. Okay, so also subcontrollers are dispatched by name. If I do blog update, it's going to be dispatched to my blog entry controller update method, because the first part of the URL is blog, which dispatches to the blog controller, and the second part is update, which dispatches to the update method. Okay? And you also have the index method, which in this case is served because we wrote blog, and it's going to serve the blog index. And you also have more advanced methods which permit to implement strange kind of routings, like the underscore default and underscore lookup methods. We are not going to see because they are not required for most use cases. Is object dispatch clear to anyone? Any question?
Yes, I guys to start with what you guys modify the methods. So I didn't catch it.
Which one is not clear? To route to the more method, well, you just write it inside the URL. Yeah, as I explained, you just every method you expose, it's available as an URL by the name.
Then if you want to have some parameters,
You can pass them as URL encoded parameters inside the URL, or you can even pass them by position. Both work, This one will pass them in the order they are available inside the function declaration, while this one is going to pass them by name, so the order doesn't count. Okay, if we, or just this patch is clear to anyone, we are going to see how to create an actual web page over it. And to do that, we are going to use the template languages, template engines, because, of course, while my example is perfectly fine for an hello world, you don't want to have like hundreds of HTML code inside your Python application. It just gets messy and so on. And template engines do a lot of things for you, like validating the code, like escaping the text you put inside the template, and so that it doesn't break your HTML and so on. TurboGears is actually agnostic on the template language you use, as I told you before. There's official supported are Genshi, Jinja, Mako, and Kajiki, which are, I think, the four most used template languages. We are going to see the difference because there are actually really different template engines, and each one of them has some features and some problems. And Genshi is the suggested one. It's suggested due to the need to have a common template engine for pluggable application. Like if I write an extension of a piece of an application that other people are going to use, they need to have my same template language engine, because I'm probably going to import the global site layout and so on. So TurboGears decided that even though you can use any template engine for your code, whenever you are writing an extension or a pluggable application, you should be using Genshi, because that provides a common language for every application written in TurboGears. And that leads to the fact that most people just use Genshi, because as the issue of being slow is actually the slowest of the four template engines, but it's also the one that has more features like being syntax checked and so on. This is a comparison of all the available template engines, and Genshi, which is the default one, is a markup stream template engine. What does it mean? It means that what you write is perfectly valid markup. You cannot write a Genshi template which is not valid HTML, because actually Genshi requires you to write XML. So you cannot leave an unclosed tag or something like that. Genshi is going to complain you and tell you, hey, you forgot to close this tag. So you get errors at compile time instead of getting them when your user opens the page and everything is broken because you forgot to close some tag somewhere, which actually happens often with the text template languages when using a lot of partials. And Genshi enforces you that each piece of code, each template you write is a perfectly valid XML file by itself. And it doesn't have any additional syntax. It just uses XML attributes. So you can actually open your template in tools that support HTML, like Dreamweaver or things like that, and edit the template from there. And it will work, it doesn't break, and so on, because it uses just XML attributes to perform advanced features. And the fact that it's streamed is the reason why it's so slow, and we don't care much about that. It just means that you, the template language is compiled to an intermediate format, which makes possible to modify the template itself from the template at execution, which is a feature you are not going to use a lot. It's just used to include other templates, but, well, it's there. They wrote it like that. And it's the reason why Kajiki has been created, because Kajiki is markup language, which is exactly like Genshi, but it's compiled instead of streamed, which makes it a lot faster, like 10 times faster than Genshi. But you cannot modify the template at runtime, and currently Kejiki is not available on Python 3, so we are not going to use it. All the other languages are instead available on Python 3, and Mako and Jinja are somehow similar in the sense that they are both text template languages, so you can write there anything. It doesn't have to be XML or any other kind of format. For example, Mako is also used by the migration toolkit of SQL Alchemy by Alembic to create the migration scripts. So it used to create Python code itself. And the fact they are compiled makes them really, really fast. Actually, I don't know currently which one is the faster because they continue to compete and get one a little faster than the other, and then the other catches up and so on. So they are perfectly valid solutions, and they are really wide use because Jinja is the default suggested template engine for Flask, while Mako is the most common template engine for the Pyramid Pylons community and so on. Now, to start having a template, we are going to install Genshi first, of course. Oops, from inside my environment. Yeah, on Python 3 is going to complain on some C speedups which won't compile. It's not important, it will continue to work like before. It's just a little bit slower because it didn't compile the C speedups, because the ABI for Python changed between 2 and 3, of course, and by Unicode object doesn't mean a lot there. And if it's successfully installed, you can import it, of course, and it won't complain on anything. Now, when you have Genshi installed, you will need to enable it inside of TurboGears. So we are going to tell TurboGears to make Genshi available as a renderer. Renderers are the one we can use inside the expose calls to tell to the framework to render that template whenever it's going to serve that page. So by adding this line, we are going to add support to Genshi inside our application. So in the configuration part, right after creating it, I just set Genshi as my render. Now if I start TurboGears again, you will see that I won't have anymore the warning that no renders are available because of course I declared Genshi. And now the first thing I'm going to do is to actually create my first template, which is just this one. It's going just to have an hello world inside. And as I told you, Genshi requires a valid XML, actually XHTML. So I'm going to declare the namespace for XML, and I'm going to declare the Python namespace, which makes available additional commands inside my template, like for loops and variables and if conditional parts and other extensions to the Genshi template language. For simplicity, I'm going again to copy everything. Just because the namespace declaration is long. Okay, now I have my template in place. And I'm just going to put an add section with a title inside. And I'm going to put a body that just prints hello world. The most simple web page possible. Now, how do I expose my template? Well, inside the expose command, I tell TurboGears which template to expose. Okay. So here you see that I tell TurboGears to expose index.html. So I'm going to do the same. And when you expose a template, instead of returning the text of the web page, you just return the set of variables you want to be available inside the template. So we are going to return a dictionary which is going to contain all the variables. And in this case, we don't have any variable we want to pass to the template. It's just going to be an empty dictionary. Voila. And I can see that it's actually serving my template because the title of my web page is now hello world because I declared it inside the template. And if I forget to close my body tag and run my application, you will see that it crashes, and it crashes telling me that there is a template syntax error that I didn't close. There is a mismatch tag, and it's going to tell me that at the line 8 I probably forgot something. So I can go at line 8 and see that at the end of the file there is something which is missing, which is actually closing my body tag.
Sorry, one question. What does the template engine need to know about the structure and the validity of the document, the HTML document?
Well, in the case of Genshi, it's has been created just to create web pages, so it checks that your web page is valid and so on. It's not that it's required to do it. It's a feature that guys at Edgeworld wanted to have. So in the case of Genshi, it also needs to know because it actually parses XML and compiles it to an intermediate document object model-like language, so you can modify the template DOM from the template itself using XPath and so on.
Every time you render a web page, it's parsing all the...
No, only the first time. The first time it creates an intermediate language, like Python creates your PyC files, and then just runs the template. It won't read it again anymore, unless you have the auto-reload templates options. In that case, it will load it again to check if you modify the file and so on. Yes. Actually, in most template languages, also Mako and Jinja and so on, they just compile the template once and then use the file unless the template changed. You especially can see that with Mako because if you enable template caching, you see that it creates a .py file inside your directory, so it's quite explicit. Okay, now that I have my working template and I'm able to load my page and see it in my browser and so on, we're going to see how to pass variables to my template. Because instead of saying hello world, I want actually to say hello to the user that is visiting my page. And to do this, I'm going to put a variable inside my template. In Genshi, variables are replaced just by dollar brackets and whatever name of the variable you want, and you close the brackets. Whatever you put inside this statement is evaluated in Python, and the result of the evaluation is placed there. Okay? So I'm going to say hello user. how user goes to my template, it goes through my dictionary. Every key, every value I put inside the dictionary is available as a value inside my template. So here I just put user equals to word, so I can get the exact same output as before. And this user is exactly this user. Okay, TurboGears gets every variable inside the dictionary that the controller returned and send it to the template. So I can run my code again and go here and see hello world again. And if I change my user, like to hello Italy, and I restart it and run it, I get hello Italy. And my template didn't change at all. So the next step we are going to do is actually get variables and pass them to the template. So we have the wall pipe in place. So we are going to get user, which by default is word, and we are just going to forward it to the template as it is. So here if I go to my index, I get hello world, and if I pass a user, I get hello Europython. Any question of this? Is it clear to anyone, everyone? Well, I hope that it is clear to at least anyone. I hope everyone.
Sorry, just one question. I can see what's wrong with this, but it's just rendering a dictionary to string.
Yeah.
It's just rendering a dictionary as a string.
Okay. How is there the template available inside the directory and so on?
It's empty. Okay, just an empty file.
Ah, okay. So the reason is that Genshi is just not loading it because it's not a template. And so whenever you don't have a template, TurboGears casts to string whatever you return from the control.
Should that like not be done on one side? Is that like
Yeah.
it's like fading silently, sort of.
Yeah. I know. Actually, it's the first time that I see that error, so it's quite uncommon because usually you have something inside your template. But yeah, it's probably something you should at least report a warning on. It might be that it is actually reporting a warning. Try to enable like the logging basic configuration. So, and probably it's going to tell at least at the bug level that Genshi failed to load the template. But yes, it should be more explicit. Okay, we already saw how to pass the parameter. And now the last thing we are going to do is going from minimal mode to a full stack application. Full stack applications are far more complex. They are not single file. They are full Python distributions, so you can freeze them at a version and install it on production, and you can like set dependencies for it that are going to be automatically installed, and you can release them on the package index, and you can have in a single place all your template models, controllers, public files, and everything else. And the full stack mode provides you a lot of utilities like authentication, like sessions, caching, and everything your application might have, which is not available by default in minimal mode. And to create a full stack application, we are going to use, well, these are some of the features which are available in full stack. You have DRM, so you have your models, with a transaction manager by default. So if there are no errors inside the code you've wrote, TurboGears will commit the changes you did to the database. If there is any error, TurboGears is going to roll back all the changes, so you don't have half-done changes to the database. You have authentication and identification, which is built in by default. You have an interactive debugger, so you see that here, when my code crashed, I just had the traceback on the shell, and it just told me like the code crashed, while in full stack it's going to open inside your browser an interactive debugger, so you can actually see what's going wrong. And then when you are in production, instead of opening interactive debugger, it's going to send you by mail the error with the whole stack and the parameters, information on the user, and so on. And it's a full space deploy compatible setup, so you can use it with any Whiskey server that supports space, like USGI, Chaussette, Circus, or anything which is space compliant. And it provides you support for static files. We were serving just pages with no images, no CSS, and no JavaScript, because by default in minimal mode static files are not served, while in full stack mode they are also served. And as I told you before, we have session and caching. And last but not least, we have support for widgets, so small parts you can render in multiple places and reuse, like forms are the most common example of widgets, and the TurboGears admin, which automatically generates for you an administration interface to create, delete, and edit your models. Those last two features are only available on Python 2, sadly, due to the widget library not being available on Python 3 yet. And to create our full stack application, we are going to use the Gearbox tool, which is provided by TurboGears itself. And it's a command that has a lot of utilities. You can see which subcommands are available by running gearbox -help. And the set of command you have depends on which plugins you installed. And by default, is just going to have the make package command, which creates a basic Python package, useful when you need like to create a library or something you need to reuse. You have the quick start command, which is going to quick start a new TurboGears project. You have the serve command, which serves any pace deploy compatible application. And you have the setup command, which runs the database and application setup script, which is available inside your application itself. We are going to see it soon. So to create my first full stack application, I'm just going to run the Gearbox quick start command, and it's just going to create a directory which the whole application inside, and it's going to create for you automatically some pages, some controllers, and so on, so you don't start empty. And you can see that it's a full Python distribution, so you have your setup PY with versioning and so on. You have like migration support for your database if you change something in the model. You have your actual Python package. Here is where we have everything. You see we have the configuration of my application, the controllers, internationalization files, like translation for other languages, libraries, like vendor-provided utilities or whatever you want, models, static files, templates, and the test suite. TurboGears automatically generates a test suite with some fixtures and so on. And the web setup package script, which is one which is started whenever you run setup app to set up your actual package. Actually, I forgot a really important option, which is really important when working on Python 3, which is the --skip -tvu options. This option disables the form generation library, which is actually called Tosca widget. That's the reason why it's called skip divu, because it's not available on Python 3. And if you forget it like I did, when you start the project, it's just going to crash because it's unable to install Tosca widget. So I'm going to recreate my project without Tosca widget. Let's double check that it's not here. Okay, no Tosca widget. Perfect. So the really important thing about the fact that you have everything there, everything inside your Python distribution, is that when you are going to deploy your application, being a full Python distribution, you can actually perform the source distribution and install it. So if I want to make my project available on server, I just can run as this, Python as this, sorry, Python start py as this, and have my whole application as a TurboGears with everything inside, and pip install it on my server, and pip upgrade and so on. Now to start using it, and this is how it looks like, as I show you on the shell, with what is available by default, the helpers and so on. And to start using it, my application, I actually need to install it. Otherwise, I won't be able to run it. So I'm going to run pip install -e of my directory. So this is just going to install the package where I'm currently in, as I'm inside my directory. And the -e options is like the development mode. Instead of installing it, it creates a symlink, so whenever we change our code, we don't have to reinstall everything. And now I run it, and it's going to download every dependency of your application. There are some packages which are part of TurboGears, and some packages which are actually dependency of your own application, because which database or layer you are going to use depends on your application, which template language you are going to use depends on your application, and so on. If I use SQL Alchemy or not depends on my application, so they are not installed by TurboGears, they are installed by your application itself. Okay, everything installed. And now I can just serve my application. Well, I would if my port was not already in use. And now if I open my browser and go to the 8080 port, I get my application, which actually being a responsive layout, it's missing a piece due to the small monitor. If you have a bigger monitor, you will also have here more informations and a different layout. By default, TurboGears comes with the Bootstrap framework, so you have responsive design for free and so on. I suggest you to have a look around inside the default quick started application, because there are a lot of information on your application itself, like where you can find your models, the structure, templates, authorization and authentication, and the default login and password for the user that is created by default for you. And like you have the data page where you can try to pass any data. It just a pass-through. If I put data here, I see data back, and I can ask it to send me the information as JSON, and you can play a lot and see what's inside, how it works, and so on. So just have a look around. And after the coffee break, we are going to see how to actually play inside full stack applications and manage the database and so on. I'm just going to leave you a bunch of minutes to finishing installing everything and starting your application and play a little with it, and then we are going to have like a bunch of minutes of coffee break. I suggest to have like 15 minutes and so on, so we can restart back soon without waiting for 45 minutes and so on. Yeah, when you run pip install -e, it actually creates a symlink. So if I go inside my environment, I go inside the site packages directory, you see that for your application there is the link. It's not actually installed. And it's easy because if you open it, it's just the path to your project. So you don't have to reinstall it each time you made. Yeah. It makes sense where you are developing your machine.